I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today we're going to be reviewing Apt Pupil by Stephen King. Now, I've been to Dachau prison camp in Munich, Germany. I've been to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. I've been to the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam. I've been to Omaha Beach, France. I've been to a number of the World War II historical sites, and I felt the power of those sites. I mean, I was standing in the Anne Frank house, just a big fat guy crying my eyes off when I got to Anne Frank's bedroom. And people were probably looking around like, who's the big fat guy crying his eyes out? But that was me. That was me. I mean, that girl was taken to a concentration camp and killed. And she was just a young girl, and the Nazis took her and killed her, all at the behest of Adolf Hitler, one of the worst atrocities in the world. And an apt pupil, Stephen King, takes it upon himself to write about one of the worst horrors that's ever taken place in our world, the Holocaust. You know, I don't know how many of you have been to Germany, but I think everybody should go. I think it's a beautiful country. I love going there. My novels are published in German. They do very well in Germany. I love the German people. And this novel, Apt Pupil, paints a grim picture of Germany at the time of World War II. And above and beyond every horror novel Stephen King has ever written, I think this is the one that is based on reality, where we get to see and hear about the atrocities that the Nazis committed in those concentration camps and against the innocent. So if you don't like that kind of thing, this book is not for you. This book is not for you. If you do not like World War II history or extreme horror, this book is not for you. I mean, in most of Stephen King's books, we get horror, but it's of a supernatural variety. It's of as a monster jump out behind the corner, scare you variety. This is horror of reality. This really took place. This really took place. Now, as you know, I am reading through all of the short novels that are in the book Different Seasons. I've already reviewed Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. That was the first book. Apt Pupil is the second book in Different Seasons. I'm giving each one of the books in this larger book its own review because I think they're all worthy of their own review. So the Apt Pupil, let's start about it. Let's talk about the Apt Pupil. I read this book as I listened to the audible.com version read by Frank Mueller. If you've been following my reviews, you know that I read along word for word with the audible.com narration. Frank Mueller narrated Shawshank Redemption. He narrated this. He narrated the other books in Different Seasons. He does a great job. No complaints there. Thumbs up for Frank Mueller, doing a great job. So let's get to the plot of this. I don't do spoilers, so this is not a spoilery review. This is just a basic plot point kind of a thing to get you interested in reading it if you want to. But let's talk about that. What the setup of this is it takes place in America. And it takes place and it revolves around a teenage boy named Todd Bowden, who is a history nut. He's a World War II history nut. More importantly, he's a fanatic about the Nazis, and he wants to know everything about the Third Reich and the SS, and he wants to know all about their horrors. Well, what happens is he recognizes that someone in his neighborhood bears a striking resemblance to one of the SS soldiers that he saw in his history books. Now, the man's older now. The man is named Arthur Denker, lives down the street from Todd, and Todd starts following him around, trying to figure out, is this old man the Nazi that I saw in those history books? Is it the same guy? And he decides that it is. And so he knocks on Frank Decker's door, and he confronts him. And he says, hey, I know who you are. You are actually Kurt Dusender, the SS guard in Hitler's elite SS unit, and you participated in all of these Holocaust atrocities. And Mr. Denker at first denies it, but then he eventually admits, yes, I was once a Nazi, and I did commit atrocities, and I fled to South America, and I eventually ended up here in America in hiding. And so our young teenager Todd decides to blackmail this Nazi and say, I will tell the world who you are and where you live, and you will go to prison unless you do everything I say. Well, what Todd wants from this guy is gruesome. He doesn't want the guy to do anything gruesome. He doesn't want the Nazi to do anything gruesome for him. He just wants the Nazi to recount every gruesome thing he ever did in World War II to Todd. He gets off. He gets excited hearing these stories, and he makes this man tell him every story and every bad thing he did. And that's where the horror in this is listening to Mr. Denker, or Mr. Dusender, as he was known in Nazi Germany. The horror of this book lives within the horror tales he relays to young Todd. And Todd is thrilled to hear them. Todd loves to hear them. And that's where things start to go wrong. Because Mr. Denker, Mr. Dusender, he's a smart guy. And he starts to blackmail Todd. And then Todd starts to blackmail him more. And then he starts to blackmail Todd. And then there's double cross after double cross. And, things spiral out of control between two what amounts to be very evil people. And that's the basis of this horror story. Not only is it a horror story about the history of the Holocaust, but it's a horror story about what two evil people can do to each other in modern times. And it really goes into some dark, dark, dark places. Probably some of the more darker places Stephen King goes. And I liked it. I liked the book. It was fascinating just because I too am interested in German history. I've been to Germany several times. I have my novels published in German. I have a lot of German fans, and I think Germany is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. If you do ever take a trip up to Hitler's Eagle's Nest up in the German Alps, it's some of the most beautiful landscape you will ever see. And you look around at this and you can't believe that this was the home of the Nazis. You can't believe that this is the landscape where the Holocaust took place. It's a contradiction. The beautiful landscape of this place is just a contradiction to the history of it. It just doesn't make sense. And just one of the greatest horrors of our time, and Stephen King captures it in a horrific way. So I was terrified by a lot of this, but I also know a lot of World War II history, so I knew a lot of the characters that were being talked about in this. Great book. If you're not into that type of horror, stay away from this, because I don't think a lot of people are going to like it. I liked it because I too am interested in German history, and I give it, it's not one of Stephen King's better. I give it a 7 out of 10, which is a pretty decent score. I give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good book. I think it fits nicely into the different seasons. I think it fits nicely. All the novels in different seasons are kind of connected in a way, and you have to read them all to see the connections. I won't give away those spoilers because they're kind of fun to stumble upon. But they're all connected. The Shawshank Redemption is connected to Apt Pupil, which is connected to the body, which is connected to the breathing method, and I will be reviewing those two at a later date. And so 7 out of 10 for Apt Pupil. If you're into that kind of thing, get it. As you know, I end every video by saying that I write novels, and I dedicate every single novel to Stephen King, Motley Crue, and the Oakland Raiders, because those were the three things that were most important to me as a kid, and so every novel I write gets dedicated to them. And so a shout out to Apt Pupil. Please, if you like this kind of thing, go get it. I think you'll enjoy it. If not, stay away.